Okay, so I wanted to present today. The title I did change the topic a bit, but it's mostly on the coronavirus, the response to the coronavirus, and yeah, that will be the topic for today. And so I wanted to start with um, let's see the coronavirus pandemic and sorry. Yes, there we go. Yes, how it impelled a very rapid development of vaccines based on the mRNA platform in the case of Pfizer BioNTech and Moderna, and adenovirus for AstraZeneca as well as Johnson and Johnson. And there's others, more conventional ones, such as the ones listed here. So getting into the origins of the coronavirus. So there are two competing hypotheses. The zoonotic origin versus lab leak, and uh, yeah, initially when it first started, there were rumors because the the Wuhan Institute of Virology was located close by the market. But actually, you can is there a laser pointer? You can see on this map that.
The laser point doesn't work.
Okay.
Maybe you can use your finger.
Yeah, I can't reach up that. But here you see one called the WIV, that is the Wuhan Institute of Virology, and these red dots are the outbreaks, which were around the Hunan market. So just by the epidemiological pattern, you would bet that it was linked to the market and not necessarily the Wuhan Institute of Virology. Um,
You put zoonotic origin and lab leak here opposite to each other.
Mhm.
But I mean, the lab leak would then could still be zoonotic origin samples collected from caves or.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I guess it's still not mutually exclusive. And by lab leak, it doesn't necessarily have to be purposeful.
Yeah.
Just just that there was there was it was a specimen that got leaked from the lab, and there have been precedents for lab leaks. It did happen in SARS. It wasn't the cause of the of the entire pandemic, but there was a leak. There was a leak from a Beijing Institute of Virology, though that wasn't the start of the pandemic. It had zoonotic origins before that. And there's also the case of the Marburg virus, which is extremely serious. It has an infection fatality rate of 80%, and there have been several outbreaks over the years. Most famously in West Germany, but there have been a few other cases in Zimbabwe and South Africa, USSR, and recently in the Netherlands. But I didn't look into that 2008 case, but it might be interesting. But actually, the Marburg virus was first observed in 1967, and it was in two locations in Germany, Marburg and Frankfurt. And in Marburg, it was amongst laboratory personnel who were working on the poliomyelitis vaccines, and lots of their work was working on grivet monkeys. And in Frankfurt, they were able to trace it back to people that had been exposed to monkeys. And there's also a little known case in Belgrade, in the former Yugoslavia, where these scientists were doing necropsies on grivets, and one was accidentally exposed to blood, and they had two infections, but they survived. And there was just a paper out recently, and this is very interesting evidence that there's a 19 nucleotide sequence of which codes for the furin cleavage site, which has 100% identity with a Moderna patented sequence. And there's no other instances of the sequence occurring in the SARS-CoV-2 phylogeny. So it is somewhat suspicious because the odds are quite low, but we do see furin cleavage sites occur naturally. So what is furin cleavage? So basically, the spike protein has to be cleaved into two component parts in order to activate the process to enter the cell. And it's known that the inclusion of a furin cleavage site actually improves the infectivity of coronaviruses. So you do see multiple cases of furin cleavage occur within the family of coronaviruses. So within this phylogenetic tree, you can see all the ones marked red have a furin cleavage site. But it is still amongst the degeneracy of amino acid coatings and the further degeneracy of nucleotide coatings for a given furin cleavage site. It is it still is very low odds of a random origin. So it's still like it's very difficult to confirm.
Sorry, can I ask a question to this?
Yes.
I mean, there are a ton of other viruses that have furin cleavage sites, also other SARS viruses, right?
Yeah.
So what makes it so unlikely that it's just parallel evolution?
Basically, the fact that there's this exact match within the nucleotide sequence, whereas it could have, if it was evolving purely for the activity of furin cleavage, it could have reached this, it could have achieved this activity by any number of, by several amino acid sequences, and under that, multiple different nucleotide sequences. So that is a point for sort of the suspicion of this site matching previous patent, though it could evolve naturally. It's just unlikely that you would have the exact same nucleotide sequence.
I think it's you can.
Okay. All right. So actually look at the vaccines. They were developed very rapidly as far as vaccines go. Normally takes a few decades, but in this case it took a matter of less than a year. And let's see. And clinical trials were very rapid. The initial emergency use authorization trials were performed on 8 to 12 weeks of data, and they did show significant reduction. Famously, Pfizer was 95% effective, Pfizer and Moderna were 90 and 95% effective against symptomatic infection, which was the endpoint that was measured, and rapidly they were approved for wide dissemination. And there's several issues which have come about, such as data integrity issues in the trial, particularly in the Pfizer trials, significant safety signals showing up in post-vaccination databases such as the Vaccine Adverse Events Reporting System in the United States, and also some studies left wanting before approval. And so, as for data integrity issues, there was a case of a whistleblower from one of Pfizer's trial contractors, who worked for a company called Ventavia, who noticed several issues of protocol violations, and this was in Texas, and yeah, it was amongst 3 sites of the 153 that the whistleblower knew of. And anyways, there was a whistleblower who came forward with these issues. And there was the issue of unblinding post once interim results came about and showed that the vaccines were highly effective. Participants were given the choice to take the participants in the placebo group were given the choice to take the vaccine, which did eliminate much of the control group for comparison. The rationale being that most adverse events from the vaccine would show up within days or weeks post-vaccination. And interestingly enough, if you look at the actual raw data of the study, you do see a significant difference in this particular category of important protocol deviations prior to 7 days after dose 2. So you see for the Pfizer group, it's 311 versus placebo at 60, which is, if one would think it's a truly randomized control trial, these should be roughly equal. Yes.
Compared to other medication in other trials, how do these groups match up? Is it always 50-50?
I haven't looked at that.
Could you explain what does these numbers mean? What is
Oh, but basically these are the numbers of people. Well, it has the total, and then there's a subset which were excluded.
as important protocol deviations? Yeah,
What does it mean?
I can't understand what it means
It
basically.
means they excluded them from the numbers because something went wrong?
Yes.
Okay.
And how many percentage from what? Because it's like 300.
300 to 20,000 in each group.
So they excluded 1%, 1.4%.
Yeah. I don't think that should have that shouldn't move the needle on efficacy in a large direction, but it would move the needle on adverse events.
Okay.
Can you give an example of an important protocol deviation?
For example, I honestly don't know what they mean of this, but I have heard stories of people within the trial who had adverse reactions after the first dose, and they were not able to finish the trial, and they were excluded.
Probably of 20,000 people. Maybe also somebody died or got sick and had to leave the.
Yes. Let's see.
Oh, that's
But this
probably
is
did not
after
receive-
dose 2.
Yeah, after those.
Oh, this is did not receive the vaccines. But I guess
Still can get hit by a
Prior
car.
to 7 days after dose 2.
Okay.
they probably did the test 7 days, 14 days after those two. To make the identification.
So if you tell them they had the real thing and not a placebo, that's a deviation of protocol.
something like that,
It would be if,
because then it's not blinding.
yeah, if someone was inadvertently told, I guess they would have to exclude them. But in principle, they should keep that a secret until the unblinding point.
Yeah, but wait, but then if they had, so this accounts for some adverse side effects.
Mhm.
But then it makes sense that the vaccine had more side effects than no vaccine, right? Why should it be 50-50?
Because these weren't counted in the adverse events. These were exclusions.
But also not in the positive events.
Okay.
Yeah, but the question is, of course, is this different than for a normal trial? It seems to me like a very small number, but if I have an exam and what is it, 20 people register, there's always only 17 showing up.
That's high. That would be high.
So, severe protocol deviation, I would say, but.
I mean, do you also have a
And
group of
then-
students you give a placebo test, or
Sorry?
do you have a placebo exam, you give
Yeah,
placebo?
no, when there is free beer or free pizza, then they also.
Yes, Bill?
Yeah, so I see there after 14 days there is almost the same numbers. That's the same patients, I think.
Yeah, well, this would
Must
be, this is this plus
Yeah,
the people between
Plus
7
one.
and 14.
Yeah, that's one.
Okay.
Well, a big toxic one.
And we do see some immune escape from especially with Omicron. Like this is data out of Scotland. It actually shows higher rates amongst people who've received 2 doses, and these are case rates. They do carry the caveat that these are age standardized rates. They don't account for differences in behavior, but still is.
Can you explain what we should see? Because
Oh,
I
yes,
see the
yes.
table.
But basically, for these gray bars are the cases as of 7th January, and you
Cases
see
of infections.
yeah, you see unvaccinated, single dose, 2 dose, and booster dose.
Okay.
Wait a sec, so these are absolute numbers, right?
These are case rates per 100,000.
But here it looks like that the booster does help, right?
Yes,
Okay, so
but
immune
not
escape,
but not
but
relative
the
to
third
unvaccinated.
booster shot does help to prevent cases.
Relative to 2 doses, not relative to unvaccinated.
No, but
No, I thought.
No,
you have to
You have-
normalize this by the people who got a booster
Yes.
or unvaccinated.
This is per 100,000 case rates.
Yeah, but
There are
ca-
fewer people
cases-
unvaccinated, so of course the number is lower.
Yeah, well,
Because of statistical noise?
No. But is this number per 100,000 people? Are
Yes,
these
it's per
unvaccinated?
100,000 people. It's a case rate.
Okay.
Yeah, but case,
how
it's
is it
conditional that they are and unvaccinated
So
and
these 100,000,
got corona.
yeah, what he's asking
Yes.
is if these 100,000 are, do you
Oh,
divide by
no,
100?
it's per 100,000 unvaccinated people.
I see.
Okay.
And then 1 dose is per 100,000 people who received 1 dose.
Yes.
And the same, okay.
And
But then it makes sense to be unvaccinated.
But isn't it also true that unvaccinated people
Yeah,
don't
live
like
different.
getting tested?
Yes, that is a part of the explanation for the lower case rates.
It does work.
5 times.
so did they just like collect like people at the streets randomly, or what was the methodology?
Well, this is from Health Scotland.
Mhm.
Let's see.
Because the thing is that like, maybe like at least in the many Western countries, what I've seen that the unvaccinated people live in like more in the rural areas with less population density, and they're just like less likely to transmit like catch corona because of that.
Move this up.
So the methodology is quite important here. Like where did you collect the data for each of the groups?
Vaccinated people were all working in the hospital.
You know, maybe they were forced to vaccinate because they were healthcare workers, let's say, and then they were working this, you know,
And of
in a
course,
very, very confined space.
so, and of course, take the people that got vaccinated versus the people that got unvaccinated. Because I don't know if that graph is gonna pop up as well, but you were 16 times more likely to end up in the hospital unvaccinated.
Can I still get
Right.
unvaccinated? Because maybe I want
Am I,
It's time. If you get 10 vaccines, it's zero.
Bone marrow transplant, I think.
Just cancels out.
Okay, Matthew, we have a few more minutes.
Okay.
Maybe you should
Yes, yes. And
continue.
in the Scotland data, the same pattern exists for hospitalizations. So this is acute hospital admissions, and you do see a similar trend, higher for 2 doses versus unvaccinated, but lower for a booster.
Wait, but when did the people get the second dose? Because after the booster, you can see that the number drops. And
Well, this is just if they had 2 doses, you know, after the 14-day window, they're counted as having 2 doses.
but why is for example, if you look at not at the gray line, but above, you see the numbers are slightly different. So they're actually much lower for the second for 2 doses.
Well, that's the case rate within that week.
Well, wouldn't it then be logical, because at some point even if you have 2 vaccinations, the effectivity of that vaccine in your body is lower, that's why you need the third.
Yeah,
Vaccine.
so basically some immune senescence. And here we see a similar pattern with deaths. Oh,
The thing you would expect that the numbers in each line would be proportional for like each of the categories. You know, like and the ratios don't necessarily keep up. So for example, if you look at the first line for unvaccinated and this last line, and then compare it to 2 doses or booster, like
Yeah, and-
the ratios are not the same. Like why is that? For example, after 1 dose, see, it increases by a factor of, it decreases by a factor of like what, 30?
so,
It's just weird. Like,
What?
the data looks weird.
But also, so these are doses only from Pfizer, right? Not all-
this is all.
like the
This is all vaccines in Scotland,
all
all approved. So
They use quite a lot
AstraZeneca.
AstraZeneca. So we're actually not looking at Pfizer then, no more AstraZeneca.
Yeah, we're looking at them all sort of jumbled together. Yeah, I should be swift.
Yeah.
So this is vaccine effectiveness against time. So this is relative odds ratio. It shows quite strong protection against Delta, but Omicron wanes against Omicron. It wanes quite quickly.
What is on the y-axis?
This is the odds ratio of 2 doses of Pfizer for cases vaccine versus unvaccinated.
Sorry, I don't know what odds ratio is.
So at 1, you're equally likely to have a case as an unvaccinated person. When it starts at 0.6, then the vaccine effectiveness is 40%.
So this shows that after 7 months, you are more likely to get Omicron if you are vaccinated.
That's what this one shows.
within the error bar, it's still 1, right? So I would say so you're equally likely.
And here's Delta and Omicron.
But yeah,
But then it's still
so these.
to have a case and not necessarily to get sick from it.
Yes, this is cases. There is still effectiveness against hospitalization in some studies. This is another one. I'll go through it fast, but this is UK data. Black is against Delta, gray is against Omicron. This is Canada.
Very good.
This is Norway.
This is your work.
So they also do quite similarly.
Yes. Yes.
Sorry, Matthew, can I ask a question?
Yes.
Because maybe it's unclear because I'm trying to watch this from home, but I have no clue what I'm looking at, what these graphs are, and
Oh, yes.
what numbers and
Not just
what
one.
populations.
Not just one
Sorry.
window.
So what's the main message from this slide?
You see consistent immune waning within 2 to 3 months against Omicron.
But like against Delta, it's still quite effective. I can see that it's like, was it 60%? Against Omicron, yeah, it decreases indeed.
Mhm.
But I think with Omicron, it was publicly said that vaccines are not effective that much. Unless like you get boosted and then you get an immunity for a short time.
Yeah, I guess the point is that there has been some level of immune escape.
Maybe do you have a conclusion?
Yeah,
And
I'll
we
skip.
can move there because we're out of time.
Okay, so
I already took it.
So yeah, basically, the argument for mandates is that vaccines reduce the spread of the virus and they lessen the strain on hospitals. The first point, if you look at actual infections, it doesn't seem to be the case outside of a 2 to 3 month window. And as for lessening strain on hospitals, there is there is some effectiveness that way. But it is a very age-skewed function. So this is deaths, but hospitalizations follows a similar age skewing. So that was my presentation. So thank you.